What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be ranking the 32 NFL teams based on how they performed week one. At the end of this video, you'll know how I rank these teams in this list, and I want you to comment down below if you agree with this tier list. Also, comment down below, how are you doing in your fantasy league after week one? Did you win your matchups? And who impressed you this far? Let's get into it. So, for starters, we had the Thursday night football game, Eagles and Cowboys. Eagles won the game with 24 points, beating the Cowboys, who only had 20 points. Hurts had 152 passing yards and led the team in rushing with 62 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Barkley also had 60 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Dotson led in receiving with 62 yards with minimal impact from Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And the Eagles managed to make 1 field goal, only attempting 1 field goal. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott had 188 passing yards with 0 touchdowns. Williams led the team in rushing with 54 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Lamb led the team in receiving yards with 110 yards. Lamb had 2 crucial dropped passes, which kept the Cowboys from winning the game, and they attempted 2 field goals and made both of them. So, the Eagles, in my opinion, are coming off strong from last season. And in my opinion, they're still doing really good. So we're going to put them in the early playoff category. That's just my opinion. They haven't really made a whole lot of changes. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league right now. So they're going to be in the top tier early playoff category. The Cowboys, on the other hand, there's been a lot of issues going on with the Cowboys. Everybody knows the whole Micah Parsons deal went south. Micah Parsons ended up going to Green Bay. Jerry Jones I know he's hurt from this one after losing this game to the Eagles. Having somebody like Micah on that defense probably would have made an impact against Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. So, with that being said, and we had Lamb that dropped the 2 crucial passes in this game, I'm going to put the Cowboys in the needs improvement column. I think they need improvement. Dak was doing his thing early on in the game, but then it just dropped off. And he really needed CeeDee Lamb to step up. And George Pickens didn't even have that great of a night either. So I feel like Lamb and Pickens, I think their pass game needs to improve. And I think their defense definitely needs to improve just because they don't have Michael on that team anymore. So we're going to put the Eagles in the top category, and we're going to put Dallas in the needs improvement category. Next up on our list, we got the Friday night Brazil game, Chiefs and Chargers. Mahomes had 258 passing yards with 1 touchdown. Mahomes led in rushing with 57 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. And Marquise Brown led in receiving with 99 yards. The Chiefs attempted 3 field goals and made all 3, but they missed an extra point and failed a 2-point conversion. Xavier Worthy got carted off after 1 carry, and it just seems like they couldn't get anything going on offense, and they couldn't stop the run from the Chargers. The Chiefs ended up with 21 points, and the Chargers won the game with 27 points. Justin Herbert had 318 passing yards with 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. Hampton led the team in rushing with 48 yards. Johnston led in receiving with 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Chargers went for 2 field goals and made both of them. Herbert's 30-yard rush at the end sealed the victory for the Chargers. The offense, in my opinion, was cooking this game, but the defense started to get sloppy at the end. But somehow they managed to hold back the Chiefs. So, in my opinion, the Chargers, it's a difficult. I want to put the Chargers in the early playoff spot. But, just because you have one good game doesn't make you, especially I mean, it was the Chiefs, okay? I mean, they beat the Chiefs, and I don't think anybody had the Chiefs winning this game. Or, I don't think anybody had the Chargers winning this game. But with that being said, I think I'm going to put them in the looked decent category. I don't think they're in the same category as the Eagles just yet, but they definitely do look a lot better, especially if we're just considering this week 1 game. And now I'm going to put the Chiefs. I think I'm going to put the Chiefs in the need improvement category. I mean, they couldn't really do much with their number 1 receiver being carted off. They could have had Travis Kelce step up. I mean, he got 1 touchdown, but, you know, he couldn't really do much. Mahomes also got a rushing touchdown, but they were just getting really sloppy at the end of the game, and they just couldn't get anything going on offense. But, yeah, I think those 2 categories, I think those are 2 good picks for those 2 teams. Next, we got the Raiders and the Patriots. Now, I didn't really watch this game. I kind of just looked over the highlights. But the Raiders won the game with 20 points over the Patriots, who had 13 points. Geno Smith had 362 yards passing with 1 interception and 1 touchdown. Hardly any rushing yards. The highest in the rushing category was Ashton Gianti with 38 yards and 1 touchdown. And Brock Bowers had 103 yards. The Raiders went for 3 field goals, but they only made 2. And they ended up beating the Patriots. On the Patriots, Drake May had 287 yards passing, 1 interception, and 1 passing touchdown. Rushing, hardly any rushing, but the highest was 27 yards by Henderson. Kayshawn was the highest in the receiving with 103 yards. And the only touchdown was from Demario Douglas, who somehow managed to end the game with -2 yards. Don't know how that happened. But the Patriots went for 3 field goals, but only made 2, just like the Raiders did. And it ended up being the Raiders' ball game that game. So the Raiders made improvements this offseason. They got Pete Carroll on their as their head coach. Obviously, they got Geno Stone, or I keep saying his name. I think it's Geno Smith. Geno Smith, I'm pretty sure. They picked him up in the offseason, and they're kind of making this seem like it's some Seattle reunion going on here. But in week 1, I guess it's working. I mean, they beat the Patriots, but then again, it's the Patriots. So, with that being said, we're going to put... Where are they at, Raiders? There they are. We're going to put the Raiders in... I guess we'll... You see, because then again, it's like, it's the Raiders. I mean, I guess we'll put them in the look decent category. Because we got to think about this. This is a week 1 tier list. We're not going overall. This is just week 1. So, if we take it for how it looks, it just being week 1, they look decent. Now, the Patriots, on the other hand, we're going to put them in the needs improvement category. Because they need improvement. And I don't know how your lead receiver ends up getting only -2 yards at the end of the game. So, I think those categories fit those 2 teams. Next up on our list, we got the Steelers and the Jets. The Steelers managed to pull out the victory against the Jets, 34-32. Aaron Rodgers had a phenomenal game with 244 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. The rushing was pretty much non-existent, with Warren only accumulating 37 yards. DK and Calvin Austin led receiving, with DK at 83 yards and Austin with 70. The Steelers attempted 2 field goals and made both field goals. Jets, on the other hand, Justin Fields had 218 passing yards with 1 passing touchdown and 2 rushing touchdowns. Breece Hall led rushing on the Jets with 107 yards, and Garrett Wilson led receiving yards with 95 yards and 1 touchdown. The Jets went for 2 field goals, and they made both of them. This game, A lot of people were watching this game. A lot of people were hyped for this game. They wanted to see what Aaron Rodgers still had in the tank, and obviously from the score, it look. I mean, I guess they went off. Um, Rodgers still proved that he got it. You know, they didn't have hardly any rushing because Rodgers was chucking that thing down the field. So I guess Rodgers still has something to prove. But I think the Steelers look, in my opinion, the Steelers look decent. They're probably, if I were to put these in like A, if I were to give these like actual grades, this one being A, I would probably have them at a B plus sitting in this category. So they're like right there. They're not quite there yet. I mean, I'm sure people wanted to see DK get some extra touches and they wanted to see DK get a touchdown, but you know, for it being week 1, we're gonna put him right there. And then on the other hand, the Jets actually looked pretty. Even though they lost the game, they still looked pretty decent from what they used to be last year with Aaron Rodgers last year. So I'm also gonna put them in the look decent category for it being week 1 because Justin Fields went off that game. I was looking at some of the highlights this game and he made just as many good throws as Aaron Rodgers did in this game. So I think I'm going to put them both in this category. Next up on our list, we got the Giants and the Commanders. For the Giants had 6 points, no touchdowns, by the way. They were 2 field goals. The Commanders had 21 points. Russell Wilson threw for 168 passing yards and no touchdowns. Russell led the team in rushing yards with 44 yards, and Neighbors led the receiving with 71 yards. And as I said before, they went for 2 field goals and made both of them. For the Commanders side, Jaden Daniels threw for 233 yards with 1 passing touchdown, and Merritt led the team in rushing with 82 yards and 1 touchdown. Debo led the team in receiving with 77 yards and 1 rushing touchdown and no field goals. So this game, I was watching this game, and Jaden Daniels looked like he was doing his thing early on in the game. He looked like he was getting some of them throws down there. He was running with his legs a little bit. So we're going to get the same Jaden Daniels this year that we did in his rookie MVP year last year. I thought they could do a little bit better, but then again, it was a division game, so there's only so much you can do in division games, so I don't blame them. So the Commanders, I'm going to put them in the looked decent category. And then the New York Giants, I almost want to put them in the Dolphins, Panthers, Texans category. But I'm going to put them in the needs improvement category just because it's Russ. And Russell Wilson last year went off with the Steelers. So hopefully they'll bounce back. They'll bounce back next week. But then again, I don't have big hopes for the Giants. I never have, never been a Giants fan. So I don't know this franchise that much, but I know for the last some odd years, they haven't been doing as good. So next on our list, we got the 49ers and the Seahawks, another division game. The 49ers won the game with 17 points, beating the Seahawks with 13 points. Brock Purdy threw for 277 passing yards with 2 passing touchdowns and 2 interceptions. McCaffrey led the team in rushing with 69 yards. Ricky Pearsall led receiving with 108 yards. And they attempted 3 field goals, but only made 1 of them. The defense made a big stop at the end of the game with Bosa, ending up being the walk-off with 17 points and winning the game. On the other hand, the Seahawks, Sam Darnold had 150 passing yards with 0 touchdowns. Charbonnet led rushing with 47 yards and 1 touchdown. And Njigba led receiving with 124 yards. This is another game that I didn't really pay too much attention to besides the highlights. I guess one of the biggest highlights being McCaffrey's back. Brock Purdy didn't have a phenomenal game, like he's been the past 2 years, and it's definitely showing, I guess, because they don't have Debo anymore. And I think George Kittle got hurt halfway through the game and ended up being out. So he had limited weapons. And McCaffrey, obviously, he's coming off of an injury. So there's only so much he can do. But I guess we're going to put the 49ers in the look decent category. And then as for the Seahawks, I don't really have high hopes for Sam Darnold. I mean, last year he did pretty good with the Vikings, but his biggest weapon was Justin Jefferson, and he doesn't have that this year. So I don't think the Seahawks are going to go very far this year. So I'm going to put them in the needs improvement category. Next up on our list, we got the Broncos versus the Titans. The Broncos beat the Titans 20-12. Bo Nix threw for 176 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. R.J. Harvey led rushing with 70 yards, and J.K. Dobbins had 63 with 1 touchdown. Sutton led receiving with 61 yards and 1 touchdown. The Broncos made 2 field goals, and honestly, the defense was great this game with 6 sacks and 2 fumble recoveries. Denver's defense was popping off. And let me tell you, in my fantasy league, I got Denver's defense because I knew they would be popping off this season, let me tell you. On the Titans, we got Cam Ward, who threw for 112 passing yards with 0 touchdowns. Pollard led the team in rushing and receiving with 60 yards rushing and 29 receiving. And they made 4 field goals. Broncos, they've been on the rise the past year. Last year, they started doing really good. They've been trusting their quarterback. They got a good head coach. Honestly, I'm going to put them in early playoff category because I think they're going to end up doing really good this year. They got a stacked defense. And let me tell you, all fantasy owners, if you don't have Denver as your defense, you messed up this year. And then the Titans, obviously, Cam Ward, who is a rookie, he's still got something to prove. He's still got to learn. So we're going to put him in the needs improvement category. Hopefully next week he'll do better than he did this week. I mean, you're a rookie and you don't have any touchdowns to show for it in week 1. So there's only so much you can do. Next, we got the Bucs and the Falcons. The Bucs ended up beating the Falcons in a close game, 23-20. Baker Mayfield had 167 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Mayfield led the team in rushing yards with 39 yards, and Abuka led the team in receiving yards with 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Bucs went for 2 field goals, but they only made 1. And I'm surprised Mike Evans didn't get a whole lot of receptions this game. I was expecting Mike Evans to get a touchdown at least. Because, I'm only saying that because I got him on my fantasy league. But, I was expecting Mike Evans to do better. So, for not having your star receiver, pulling out a division win, they got the job done. They did what they needed to do. So, the Falcons, on the other hand, Penix threw for 298 passing yards and 1 touchdown. They had hardly anything going in the run game with Penix having the only rushing touchdown, extending that for the touchdown at the end of the game. Robinson led the team in receiving with 100 yards and 1 touchdown. They went for 3 field goals, but they only made 2 of them. They ended up missing that 44-yarder at the end of the game that would have tied it, but, like I said, they missed it, so that's why the game was a 3-point deficit. Now, the Bucs, they've been doing good with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback. I used to not like Baker when he was in Cleveland. I used to shit on him every chance I got, but, he's really proven himself in Tampa, and I think he's doing really good down there, and he's going to continue to do good down there. So with Tampa, for week 1, we're going to put them in the look decent category. And then the Falcons, I don't know much about Penix. He held his own against Baker, but then again, it's a division game, so I guess we're just going to put them in the needs improvement category. Now, for the utter disappointment, we have the Dolphins and the Colts. Dolphins fans, this ain't your year. Let me tell you, it's never going to be your year if this keeps up. The Dolphins only had 8 points this game. 8 points. That's sad. I don't even have any notes on the Dolphins. I didn't feel I needed to take notes because y'all had 8 points. So I thought that was a highlight enough. On the Colts side, on the other hand, Jones had 272 passing yards with 1 touchdown passing and 2 rushing. Taylor led in rushing with 71 yards. Pittman led receiving with 80 yards and 1 touchdown. And they went for 4 field goals, and they made all 4 of them. Now, like I said, Dolphins fans, y'all got perhaps one of the fastest, who claims to be the fastest man on planet Earth. And y'all only scored 8 points. You only scored 8 points. Come on now. So, this is why I made a special category for the Dolphins. And I was originally just going to make it for the Dolphins, but then I decided to add, those 2 other teams you see on there that we're going to talk about later in a little bit. So, the Dolphins are going to go in that category, and the Colts, Daniel Jones. Jones has been, he's been doing his thing that game. I mean, he's got 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown. He led in rushing. We're going to put Jones in the look decent category, which is honestly surprising if you ask me, but, I guess it makes up for the Dolphins being complete and utter trash. Next up on our list, we got the Cardinals and the Saints. The Cardinals ended up beating the Saints 20-13. Kyler Murray had 163 passing yards with 2 touchdowns. Benson led in rushing with 69 yards. Harrison Jr. led in receiving with 71 yards and 1 touchdown. And they went for 3 field goals, but they only made 2. The Saints, on the other hand, Radler had 214 passing yards with no touchdowns. Kamara led in rushing with 45 yards and 1 touchdown. Johnson led receiving with 76 yards. And they went for 3 field goals, but they only made 2. And their defense got 5 sacks. So, for your defense getting 5 sacks and you still lost the game, that's kind of embarrassing if you ask me. So, obviously, we're going to put the Saints in the needs improvement category. But I think we're also going to put the Cardinals in the needs improvement category because, I don't know much about the Saints or the Cardinals other than James Conner because I have James Conner on my fantasy league. But, I don't know much about Kyler Murray, but, it's the Cardinals and, I guess they did decent. They managed to pull off the win, but, there's always improvements to be made. Next up on our list, we got the Packers and the Lions. I'm sure a lot of people were upset about this one, let me tell you. The Packers beat the Lions 27-13. And let me tell you, I watched this game personally, and I thought it was much... I know it's a 14-point deficit, but it felt a lot worse than that, honestly. Jordan Love had 188 passing yards with 2 touchdowns. Jacobs led in rushing yards with 66 yards, and he managed to make a touchdown right near the end of the game. Dobbs led in receiving with 68 yards, and the team went for 2 field goals, and they made both. The defense was incredible with 4 sacks, including 1 by the newly acquired Micah Parsons, who was traded by Jerry Jones and the Cowboys organization. Jerry, you made a mistake with that one, big dog. The Lions, on the other hand, Jared Goff had 225 passing yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Montgomery led in rushing with 25 yards, not getting a whole lot from Jahmyr Gibbs. Laporta led in receiving with 79 yards. And the Lions went for 2 field goals, and they made both. They couldn't get anything going on offense, and their defense struggled to contain the Packers' pass game in the early game, which led to such the big score deficit in the first half of the game. Obviously, I'm going to put Green Bay in early playoff contention. You know, I thought as soon as they acquired Micah Parsons that they were going to be a big deal. I know a lot of people were saying that Green Bay was in contention with the Eagles for the championship game. And a lot of people were saying, nah, they got to go through the Lions. Haven't you not seen the Lions? Well, they just went through the Lions. They embarrassed the Lions, let me tell you that. So, the Lions, obviously we're going to put them in the needs improvement category because they got washed. Next up on our list, we got the Jaguars and the Panthers. The Jaguars had 26 points, beating the Panthers, who only had 10. Trevor Lawrence had 178 passing yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. I'm going to mispronounce this dude's name, but Atini led in rushing with 143 yards, and Strange led in receiving with 59 yards. Jaguars went for 4 field goals, and they made all 4. The Panthers, on the other hand, Young had 154 passing yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, and Hubbard led the team in rushing with 57 yards. McMillan led receiving with 68 yards, and they went for 1 field goal, and they made it. Now, with this game being 26-10, it wasn't too exciting. I mean, probably the most exciting part was seeing the rookie Travis Hunter playing as receiver and on defense. Honestly, that's probably the only reason why people tuned in who weren't fans of either one of these teams. They wanted to see Travis Hunter. But I guess with Jacksonville, we're going to put them in the look decent category because they pulled off the victory. And then with the Panthers, we're going to put them in the dead last category because they're the Panthers. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL, and Young threw 2 interceptions. Next up, we got the Bengals and Browns. Honestly, if you've been following the Bengals the last few years, which a lot of people have, nobody thought the Bengals were going to win this game, including myself, because Joe Burrow and the Bengals are asleep during the month of September, and nobody knows why. It happens every single year. But with that being said, the Bengals beat the Browns 17-16, with it being a close game. The Browns were in the lead for a majority of the game, but Joe Burrow had 113 passing yards with 1 touchdown. Chase Brown led in rushing with 43 yards and 1 touchdown. Higgins led the receiving with 33 yards with minimal impact from Jamar Chase. The Bengals went for 1 field goal, and they made it. And Joe Burrow got sacked 3 times. I just thought that was worth mentioning because he's always getting sacked because his O-line sucks. The Browns, on the other hand, Flacco had 290 passing yards with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. Sampson led the team in rushing with 29 yards, and Judy led the team in receiving with 66 yards. The Browns went for 2 field goals, but they missed 1. And they missed an extra point, too. And the Flacco interception at the end of the game led to the Bengals' walk-off victory. So, if Flacco didn't have that interception, I feel like Flacco would have went down the field and got exactly what he needed to. And it would have kept the Bengals in the can't win a game in September curse. So, with that being said, I guess we can finally, for week 1's sake, put the Bengals in the looked decent category for them not having or spending money on defense this offseason and having the shitty O-line that they have because Joe Burrow got sacked 3 times. They looked pretty good this game. I mean, they stayed in it. They managed to pull out the victory in the end. So I guess they did their thing with minimal impact from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I have T. Higgins on my fantasy, and I was playing a person who has Jamar Chase, and I'm surprised that neither of them this week had a whole lot of points. With that being said, we're also going to put the Browns. We're going to put the... I think the Browns looked decent for having Joe Flacco, honestly. I'm going to put them, even though they lost, I'm going to put them in the decent category. Just because it's Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco was on this team a few years ago, and he took them to the playoffs. I mean, yes, they lost to the rookie C.J. Stroud, but he took them to the playoffs, so I feel like he's gonna do his thing over there in Cleveland. Next up, we got the Texans versus the Rams. The Rams won the battle with 14 points over the Texans, who only had 9. C.J. Stroud had 188 passing yards with 0 touchdowns and 1 interception. Chubb led the team in rushing with 60 yards. Higgins led the team in receiving with 32 yards. The Texans went for 3 field goals and made all 3. And the Rams, on the other hand, Stafford had 245 passing yards with 1 touchdown. Williams led in rushing with 66 yards and 1 touchdown. And Nakua led the team in receiving with 130 yards. I didn't pay too much attention to this game, besides, the highlights at the end. But it seemed like a very slow game, especially from two teams that I know can put up 20, 30 points easily. I mean, we're talking about Matthew Stafford here. I mean, I still remember one of his most memorable games a few years ago versus the Ravens, where I honestly thought they were going to win that game until Tylan Wallace, put the stamp on it at the end. But I guess from losing Kupp, you don't have your number. I don't know if Kupp was number 2 or number 1, but I mean, he ain't there anymore. So, I mean, you also got Devontae Adams, who honestly, he's just washed at this point. So, honestly, the Rams won, but I'm going to put them in the needs improvement category. Again, like I said earlier in the video, if I'm doing letters for these, and this is a B, I'd probably give them like a C+. So they're like right there on the look decent category. I just feel like Matthew Stafford could have done more in this game. Like maybe if he had like another touchdown or 2 or, something. Because it was a low-scoring game the entire game. So with that being said, we're also going to put the Texans in the bottom tier because, they didn't have... all their points were field goals. So, I feel like they could have done a lot more. So, it was a real shocker that they let me down like that. On to our next, we have the Ravens and the Bills. And I just need to take a minute. Lamar Jackson, you should have won that game. You should have won that game. The Ravens let me down. See, now I'm going to be a little biased because the Ravens are my team. And I was really looking forward to this game. I think everybody who's not a Josh Allen and Bills fan thought that the Ravens were going to pull this one off. And we should have. We honestly should have. I don't know what happened. You know what? I do know what happened. The Ravens fans got robbed. Not only did Tyler Loop miss the extra point, so we could have had 41, but also at the end of the game, Lamar could have went for the 4th and 3, but they decided to punt the ball back to Buffalo and give them the chance to go get a field goal. Now, here's what pisses me off. If you would have went for the 4th and 3 and you didn't get it, they would have been in field goal range. And I feel like you would have had more of an opportunity if you just would have went for the 4th and 3. Like, why in the world did Harbaugh decide to punt the ball away back to the Bills? Did you think if you were watching that game, when the Bills got the ball back, they weren't going to march down the field and get exactly what they needed? I mean, as soon as I saw the call, I knew exactly what they were going to do. And I knew the game was sealed as soon as they punted that ball away. And let's not talk about the Derrick Henry fumble. I mean, Derrick Henry, I love you, but you got to hold on to that ball, man. Come on. So the Ravens lost with 40 points. The Bills won with 41, pulling the clutch out at the last second for the last second field goal, walking off victorious against the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson had 209 passing yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. Derrick Henry had a phenomenal night with 169 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. But, like I said, he had that major fumble at the very end of the game, which cost him late in the fourth quarter. Flowers, on the other hand, had an amazing game, who stepped up from last year, who had 143 yards and 1 touchdown. The Ravens went for 2 field goals, and they made both of them, but like previously mentioned, they had a missed point. Overall, great night for the offense, but they just couldn't hold it together in that fourth quarter, and it got really sloppy. The O-line couldn't keep the Bills back, and Lamar had to scramble, which led to them turning the ball back over to the Bills on downs. Or, sorry, not downs, but you know what I mean. They couldn't pick up the first down. Bills, on the other hand, Allen had an astonishing night, which he had 394 passing yards that game, with 2 touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns. James Cook led the team in rushing with 44 yards and 1 touchdown. Coleman led the team in receiving with 112 yards and 1 diving touchdown at the very end of the game. The Bills went for 3 field goals, and they made all 3, including the game-winning one at the end, which sealed them for the comeback. Now, obviously, the Bills, they have to go in the early playoff category because they managed to pull off one of the greatest comebacks we're probably ever going to see this season. And the Ravens, you know, they lost, and they're my team, obviously. And I might be a little biased here, but, you know, you can let me know your opinions in the comments. I know there's a lot of Lamar Jackson haters out there, but from an offense standpoint, I'm still going to keep them in the early playoff category. Maybe it's like an A-. You know, I could see if you put them in the look decent category. If I were to do that, I'd give them a B+. But, you know, the defense cost them the game. But with that being said, I think those 2 deserve to still be in that category at right now. And finally, we have the Monday night game, Vikings and Bears. The Vikings beat the Bears 27-24. J.J. McCarthy had 143 passing yards with 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, and a rushing touchdown. Jordan Mason led in rushing with 68 yards. Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones both had 44 yards and both had a touchdown, each in the receiving core. Vikings went for 2 field goals and made both. Vikings made a comeback in the fourth quarter with the help from McCarthy's legs and a combination of Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson getting touchdowns in the fourth quarter. The Bears, Caleb Williams had 210 passing yards with 1 touchdown and no interceptions. Caleb Williams led the team in rushing with 58 yards and a rushing touchdown in the first quarter. DJ Moore led the team in receiving with 68 yards. And the Bears managed to hold up the Vikings in the first half of the game to 6 points, and they had the big pick 6 in the third quarter, but they ended up blowing the lead in the fourth and weren't able to get back on the board until late in the fourth quarter when it was too late. So, the Vikings, they don't have Sam Darnold anymore. They got the rookie J.J. McCarthy, who should have started last year but couldn't due to injury. I think for it being J.J. McCarthy's first game and them managing to get the comeback and the fact that they got, one of the best receivers in the game, at Justin Jefferson. I guess we'll put them in the look decent category. And as for the Bears, they were looking good in the first 2 quarters, but then they really fumbled at the very last of the game. They looked good when they had the pick six, but it's the Bears. What can you expect from the Bears? So we're going to put them in the needs improvement category. That's going to do it for this list. Let me know down in the comment section if you agree with this list. This will wrap it up for week 1, and then next week we'll have week 2. So, like I said, let me know if you agree with this list. Comment down below how you're doing in your fantasy leagues, and I'll see you again next week for week 2. Peace out.